Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our webinar today on what does customer centricity mean in 2021. I am Rashee Pandey, Head of Partnerships and Growth at Innovate Finance, and I'll be your moderator for today. So why is this topic so important? Well, the past 16 to 18 months have been quite unique for all of us. Expectations have changed in all aspects of our lives, right? Due to COVID-19 pandemic, which we are facing right now. And for finance, the past year has ushered in a dramatic step change in how we all interact with finance. And it has accelerated the use of digital platforms, products and services. And we all want things on our fingertips, from account opening to transaction approval. We want it all from the comfort of our phones. But is this change here to stay? So we have a stellar panel today to discuss this, and I would like to welcome all our panelists today: Maria Khan from NatWest Group, James Baston-Pitt of Onfido, and Zach Lambert of Plaid. So in this panel, we will be discussing what the lasting effects of the pandemic will be on customer behavior. And before we kick off, I would like to ask all the panelists to introduce themselves and their respective organizations. So Maria, James, and Zach, over to you guys.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Khan, so I work for the NatWest Group, or some of you might know it as the Royal Bank of Scotland. It's the umbrella bank that covers both NatWest Group, Royal Bank of Scotland, and Ulster Bank. So what I do over there is I lead and head up all things strategy, investments, and delivery for the digital and transformation part of the bank. And over the last couple of years, I've really sort of focused and led on big-scale transformation projects, which have encompassed sort of predominantly all of the franchises, all of the customer segments that we have. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Hi everyone, James Baston-Pitt. So I'm the Regional Director for Onfido for the regions of the UK and I. I've been at Onfido for coming over 6 years now. So right from the early years of inception, and Onfido do identity verification. We verify government issued IDs. And you combine it with all sorts of things, whether it be biometrics, watch list verification, but the whole key is to provide customers, or our customers, the ability to know their customers are who they say they are. And I've got to say, over like the last 6 years, I guess we saw right when I joined, it was the start of the gig economy, then first wave of crypto and fintech, and then a new wave of crypto. So it's been a real privileged position to see so much adoption in the world of digital and the change of consumers over the years.
Thank you so much, James. Zach?
Yeah, I'm Zach. I lead the growth team for Plaid in the UK and Europe. Plaid is the world's leading open banking platform. Our mission is to unlock financial freedom for all. We believe that it should be super simple to make payments from your bank account and use data from your bank account. And we have a set of APIs to make that the case.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. And while we kick off, this one's for all of you. Like we spoke about, this change in customer behavior. So what do you think has impacted this change in consumer behavior, and where consumers are, more and more inclined to use their phones for financial products and services? So what do you think has been, what has impacted this change? So Maria, do you want to go first?
Yeah, happy to kick off. I think, if you sort of observe the trend for predominantly mobile devices for the last 10 years, I think the use in the consumer land has changed quite drastically in the last 10 years. From just being a device that we use for calling and texting people, it's now a lot more that we use mobile phones for. And I'd say a lot more has happened over the last 5 to 6 years, where a lot of companies are now using mobile interfaces to provide really, really incredible customer experiences. So I think there's almost two angles of looking at it. One is the ease of use, that you can carry the mobile anywhere with you. If you need to get some documents uploaded, you can either upload it directly or take a picture. So firstly, there is this ease of use, but secondly, I think, what are other companies doing? A lot of modern and new companies like Uber and TransferWise, you could just use the mobile apps and then deliver the right experiences very easily, quite seamlessly. So I think that's brought in a bit of a change, that's brought in a bit of a wave of increasing customer demand for really, really positive, good experiences. And I think what then has impacted on the financial services, they've taken the lead on from that and then started to look at how do we utilize mobile experiences quite nicely from not just, the mobile app, but also from a payment angle for onboarding, as you said earlier, account opening to getting a credit card. So I think the shift has been quite radical, more so over the last 5 to 6 years, but more so, I think it's around how do we ensure the right customer experience is provided pretty much at the fingertips and also done quite quickly because, as pretty much everyone says, a good customer experience is not just a luxury, it's become a necessity now. So I think that trend is definitely here to stay.
I like ending on that note. It has become a necessity, like you said. James, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, following on from Maria, I completely echo everything you say there. I think consumers lead everything, don't they? So consumer behaviour, spend a lot of money trying to work out what that behaviour is. And if you can understand it well, then you can build the right products. I guess we've had this like perfect storm or maybe a bit of a chicken and egg scenario change on two fronts. A change from within. So credit to all the investors out there, there's been a huge injection of capital in technology, especially into financial services. And that's a great win for consumers, but also to allow the kind of the acceleration of change. So huge disruptors are really kind of reshaping the way financial services should look. And that's really appealed to consumers. So on the flip side to that, consumers have become less loyal as they look to find things that are easier to move to. They want more convenience. So they'll look where they go. If it appears more convenient, they certainly will give it a go. Or if it appears inconvenient, that can be opposite to what they're using today, then they'll disappear quite quickly. And then finally, and I'm sure we'll touch on it later, that ultimately the pandemic means we've gotten over the fears of non-face-to-face engagement. So that ultimately has been an accelerator as well but it was always happening. It's always this ultimately, the impact is, without doubt, you showed it at the beginning, Rashee, it is the mobile. The mobile is everything, isn't it? It unfortunately
Really is, yeah. And I agree, financial services used to be such a sticky, loyal thing, people just trusted their banks and, putting their investments with a particular company, etc. But now it's like using it differently, right? Whatever app works for you. How about you, Zach?
Yeah, I think like building on the last two answers, digital finance has been here for a long time, actually. And like some inflection point was needed to increase adoption to the extent that it currently has. If you trace like the last 30 years of how we interact with our bank accounts when we're just going about our day-to-day lives, right? 30 years ago, you would like print out your financial statements. If you had a printer, you might go somewhere to do that. You would take that to a branch, you would talk to a person, that person would scan them somewhere. It's a 20-step or so process to like get your foot in the door. That was bad. A couple of years after that, probably 10, 15, it became possible to like do this super novel thing called printing to PDF. And you would print your bank statements to PDF and you would email them to someone. And it was still like totally segregated from the actual act of getting a mortgage and applying for it. And it took a long time, but it took less time than it used to. For the last 5 to 10 years or so, that's not been really necessary. You just kind of authenticate with your bank account. That data gets pulled. Whoever you're applying for sort of finds the right lender for you. And it happens kind of all in the background while you're at your app. So the user experience has increased dramatically, sort of without this exogenous force. I think the like barrier to adoption of that has been inertia primarily, which is really powerful. So they're kind of like two parallel tracks there. One of them is like, this thing existed that some people used and really liked and kept using. And what's happened over the last 12 months or so has been like, everyone has been forced to acknowledge the existence of that thing because it has been less possible to print out statements and bring them into a branch for whatever you need to do. And because of that, we're seeing people kind of return to those experiences and accept them as the new normal. I think like in the world before COVID, physical barriers were like quite serious and you did things because they were the way that things have always been done. And now that the way that things have always been done for the last 12 months or so has been entirely through your phone, and it's convenient and people like it. So as long as companies like the few that are on this panel and others keep raising the bar there for consumers, it should continue.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think the biggest thing has also been the rise in the use of mobile phones, right? I've actually personally experienced as well, when I had my first bank account, it used to be a thing to go to the bank and, get your bank book updated so you could see your transactions. We've all seen that evolvement
Mhm.
happening. So what changes have you guys seen over the past, you can say, 1 to 2 years? And do you think these changes are here to stay? Zach, do you want to build on?
Yeah, I mean, I think like answering the latter part first, they're here to stay if we continue to build good products for users. And the first time someone interacts with a digital product, like a Plaid or an Onfido or a NatWest, and they like it and keep returning, we can continue building on that and sort of build these mobile first native experiences, and it just becomes the new normal. I think that matters significantly. I think the other part is we're seeing like embedded finance sort of take off as a trend in financial services. One consequence of like, fintechs and banks becoming based nowhere and sort of only living in your phone and possibly having branches, possibly not, but that being like an option, is that it's true for everyone else that's not a bank as well. So we're seeing big tech companies jump into financial services. We're seeing companies like Grab sort of have to build financial services into their products just so they can serve their own end users and employees. And this sort of concept of everyone becoming a fintech over a long enough time horizon has seen like the actual horizon there compress a little bit. So I think the answer is like, we have an opportunity to make this continue, but that only exists such that we continue to make it a nice experience in the time that we have kind of before everything goes back to pre-COVID normal.
Thank you. How about you, Maria, from a bank's perspective?
Yeah, completely resonate, with what Zach has said. I think with the attrition rate quite high, it's not just important to provide the right consumer experiences, but it's also to continue with that momentum, because I think at the moment the expectation is, because of COVID, we've had to do a lot of things digitally. Consumers have opted to do things digitally, which otherwise they would do in a face-to-face environment. It's about, how do we build on top of that and not just, go back to normal or assume that people would go back to normal. I think there would certainly be a shift in consumers who previously would have preferred a face-to-face engagement or a telephone conversation would now want to use a mobile app to actually do a lot of things. So it's firstly that, but I think also there are certain use cases which have really sort of been highlighted over the last 1 to 2 years. A prime example would be customer onboarding, getting a certain product, getting your foot into the door when it comes to a banking product is now a lot more smoother, a lot more easier. And I think it's not just the new banks. I think all of the traditional banks, pretty much all of the incumbents, have actually taken the lead and then given experiences where people can do that in less than 10 minutes. So I think it's about how do we build on top of that experience, because the bar is already quite high. Now you can't how do you reduce that from 10 minutes to 5, and then, where do you stop? So it's that, but then it's also around, that's a good use case that all the banks have come together and provided the right experience, but how do you look at the right other use cases which the consumers might be demanding? So I think it's striking the right balance there.
That's quite interesting, like you said, building on top of it. And when we talk about onboarding, James, you're the best person to talk about this from Onfido's point of view.
Yes, no, I mean, it's onboarding. I mean, I guess onboarding happens at all different times of the life cycle now. So everything's moved into, in a healthy way, into more silos, because there's different degrees of risk associated with them. So whether it be opening a current account, a business account, a loan, a mortgage, transferring of money. I mean, the regulator's done a good job building out this concept of a risk-based approach. And I think we've all really warmed to it. Onfido certainly has as well. And we have kind of at its core verifying the legal identity, which in all honesty is a tough old thing to do. And government issued ID documents are still kind of underpinning it. Actually, I'd say do two things. They're underpinning two elements. They're providing more access. They're also preventing a little bit more fraud, because we've got this big issue around impersonation fraud nowadays, because we're far less, we're far more digital, and as we are like we are here today, and we don't get that ability to check that person in real life as much, because consumers don't want it either. So when the regulator makes these changes like a risk-based approach, these things are going to stay, and they're going to, hopefully we're going to get some really great stakeholders from the business side who are trying to protect the business, but also trying to differentiate in what is a very competitive space. And from Fido, what does that mean? I mean, we're trying to cater for both. We want to ensure that we have the kind of customizable approach to allow businesses to verify customers to certain degrees of confidence relative to the service that they're trying to offer. And that overall unlocks more access for customers, and that's our goal, identity as the key to access.
And I believe your sales cycles have reduced, and you've onboarded quite a few members and partners as well in the past year, and we'll obviously come back to that. But my next question for all of you is, what does customer centricity mean to your organization? And are there certain trends that you're seeing within your own client base? Zach, do you want to go first with the open banking and Plaid perspective?
Yeah, sure. I think like it means sort of tautologically at first, like everyone in our organization being close to, one, our customers, and two, their customers. We're a B2B company. Our customers are primarily developers building financial services experiences for end users. It's super important that like we make their lives easier. It should be easy to integrate Plaid. You should be able to do it just by reading our docs. You should be able to go live within a number of days to weeks. Like that's sort of important to the way we think about building things. I think the other one is like not losing sight of the fact that the people that are ultimately using our products are consumers. And even though we're not selling to them directly, we have an obligation really to make sure they have those delightful experiences and sort of want to keep coming back. I think something that James just alluded to in the last answer that I think about quite a lot and Plaid thinks about quite a lot is like finding opportunities to help accelerate things that like we didn't expect 6 weeks ago, weren't on our roadmap, but we have an opportunity to assist with. It would have been very hard to onboard to like a new bank without folks like Onfido out there to verify IDs when things physically closed at the beginning of COVID. I think like quite similarly, the UK government, the US government, many other around the world sort of went really, really fast in like approving these loan disbursement programs so small businesses could survive and like getting checks to people that needed them to just maintain their livelihoods. Governments went really fast for governments in that scenario, but absolutely needed help from the fintech community, from the financial services community, like one, to distribute those funds. Like that has always been the case. ACH as a network actually exists in part because newly created social security payments had to be distributed. So there's always been like the concept of this external event creating some new technology. But in the COVID case, that was a lot of like evaluating employee size via payroll data, just to make sure that small businesses that were eligible for loans did get those loans. On the bank side, making sure those loans were sort of distributed in a timely way and they got out quickly. So kind of a couple things, but if I had to summarize, one, making sure that everyone at Plaid thinks about our customers and their end users in whatever their day-to-day job might be. Yeah. And then the second piece of that is kind of capturing opportunity to fix problems that the world didn't know we had previously.
No, that's very insightful, actually. We don't think about, payroll and disbursement of funds a lot of times, right? And for some people, it is important and difficult as well. James, how about you? Certain trends and what does it mean to your organization, customer centricity?
Yeah, customer centricity. So I guess similar to Plaid, we're a B2B2C organization. It's a really privileged position because our clients are financial institutions, and to ensure that they're happy, or they're happy if their clients are happy, which is their actual end users. So we have a kind of an indirect relationship with their end customers, to the concept where we can help I see ourselves as we get told we're a really critical cog, but we're only a cog as part of a very far larger business, but one which you have to rely on. It's a critical cog ultimately. Because it gives you that connection. So when it comes to customer centricity, we have to think about it, even though we don't have the relationship directly with their end customers. So a few things that we can do, and a few things we have done, is we've undertaken a huge amount of usability testing and research to ensure that our products are as easy as possible to use, and end users have a positive experience in providing their identity. So in terms of how we've embedded it in our culture, our company mission, like I say, is to create this open world where identity is the key to access. So we try to make that a reality by widening access and making our solution as equitable as possible. So two things spring to mind. Accessibility, first and foremost. So we put a huge amount of thought into accessibility. So 1 in 5 of us in the UK have a disability. So it's absolutely critical that we ensure our services is accessible to as many as possible. Again, right now couldn't be more, I say right now, the last year couldn't be more precise to that importance of providing that access. So we've worked with what's called DACs, the Digital Accessibility Centres, also the Royal National Institution of Blind People, as well as holding our solution to what's known as WCAG AA standards, but basically ensuring that our SDKs, so these are things that help businesses go to market quicker or help to provide massive transformation improvements from the existing flow to the new one by accessing these types of tools. And then the other area is just AI bias as well. So we're an AI company, and where there's AI, there's a potential for AI bias. So we participate in the UK's first ICO, so the Information Commission's Office Data Protection and Privacy Sandbox, to mitigate algorithmic bias in machine learning. So in summary, customer centricity to us means that we never forget that behind every check is a real person trying to get something done, and we want to make it as easy as possible for everyone.
That's great to know. Let me tell you, I have quite a few financial apps on my phone, and sometimes to do certain transactions, you need a two-step verification. So a lot of times it's just biometrics, right? But a lot of times I do have to input my passwords, and I always forget my passwords. And whenever I have to verify my identity, Onfido comes up, and I have to say it makes my life easy. And I'm sure it makes a lot of lives easy as well. So I'd rather do that than remember passwords. And that's me personally. How about you, Maria?
Yeah, I think I feel it's like almost a two-pronged approach for an organization like ours, because we obviously have consumers directly who are expecting a certain service. So one of the mottos that we go by is to become effortless every day and brilliant when it matters. I think that's almost the ethos on which a lot of the solutions that we build are then structured. I think overall, as I said, with the two-pronged approach, it's about the behavioral change. So previously, where companies or organizations would assume that consumers want something, consumers have a certain need, and then design the solution, put it out there for the customer, and then get the feedback, I think that has changed. And I would say that's certainly changed for our organization, where it's almost creating with the customer. You involve them at the very inception. You get their feedback at pretty much each step of the journey, and you have to work agile in that way as well, because getting feedback at the end just gives you validation whether it's the right thing or not. There's very little scope for improvement. If you've gone wrong massively, then you can't really do much. A better approach is to continuously optimize, continuously design the right solution. So I think the one big change that we have seen over the last couple of years is co-creation with the customer, and the customers are actually very keen to provide their input, very keen to provide their feedback. We could just simply put out rough sketches of a new solution in front of them, and they would give you the feedback. So I think getting that feedback at the right stage is very important. But on the other hand, as James and Zach have pointed out, the right solutions are also key. Getting the right solution to them, not just behavioral change, is also important, because if you're doing the right thing by involving them, but the product is not the right product for them, it would also not solve the issue. And historically, I think a lot of banks have always been product focused. So, assuming people want a current account, people want complex financial products, but I think the lens has changed a little bit. Consumer need is important, that, people don't want a current account. They want to put their money somewhere. They want to save money. They basically either have to buy a home. That's why they need a mortgage. So understanding the need of the consumer and centering your products and solutions around that is probably the second approach we've taken.
Yeah, and you spoke about co-creation, which I can resonate with that as well as a customer, and just following up, and Maria, if you could, expand on the co-creation bit, and of course, Zach and James as well, if you had to summarize in 1 to 2 sentences of what your organization is doing differently to meet those customer expectations, because of course you all have, other players within the market as well. So what are you doing differently, Maria?
I think I'd say 2 things, Rashee. Firstly, great customer experience, because I think that's negotiable. A great customer experience with the right level of security and privacy that they expect from us. So that's first. And then I think the second piece is centering the need around the customer rather than assuming that customer would come to us and they know all about finance, they know all about banking, because that's not the case. So we almost have to make things easy for them. So I would say those two are probably the new way to work.
Fair enough. Zach?
Yeah, I might go over the 2 cents limit, but I think like in brief, one, all roles at Plaid are customer facing roles. I don't think you could find one without getting a good amount of exposure to customers, kind of ingesting that feedback and putting it into our product roadmap, both like long-term and short-term, is super, super important to us and something we do on a recurring basis. And then I think the second thing is like sort of tapping the invisible mission sign above our computers all the time. We have a lot of products, sort of financial services APIs are complex. There's a lot of complexity that has built up over many, many years in financial services. Ultimately, it's kind of easy to get buried in that, but if you're driving at something as kind of motivating for our team as unlocking financial freedom for people, and building solutions that make sure their data is portable, they can do what they want with it, they can do what they want with it quickly. That's super motivating and catalyzing for folks at Plaid, and hopefully that shows up for our customers as well.
I love that motto, by the way, unlocking financial freedom. I think I can imagine how it drives you guys every morning. James?
Yeah, so I'd say document and biometric verification, especially combined, is still very much an early adopter, and it's early adopter phase, and it's now really starting to become into the mainstream. We use it, like I say, whether outside of financial services, might be to speak remotely to your GP, but it's becoming more and more mainstream. And that's a really important responsibility that we hold to ensure that consumers, because they are rightly becoming increasingly sensitive to what happens to their data online, that we make it clear and and what we do with the data, and we make it easier for businesses to communicate with their customers. So a big area around this ultimately is we've looked into the concern gained in traction around privacy, and ultimately that is going to be an important point to gain that level of trust with consumers to overcome any speed bumps that there are with kind of the benefit that it leans or you get out of it. So why would I say that? What are we doing differently? Well, I think that's precisely it. I think we don't need to do anything too differently. We just need to become exceptionally good and market leading at performing document and biometric verification. Doing things differently is ensuring that we always put the customer at the heart. And when I say that, that's the customer of that we have, but also their own customer, like I touched on in the last question. And I don't want to overthink it really. That is what we hear from our clients is do that and do that very well, and you're going to be very critical to us for many years.
Oh, that's great to know that you guys are keeping, everyone is thinking just about customers at the heart of everything. And talking about customers, I mean, these experiences, like, Zach, you said, I mean, these digital products have, been there for a while, but people are really discovering a lot of it now, and COVID has kind of accelerated it. So how do you think COVID-19 has accelerated your approach to reaching these customers in more innovative ways? And how has your organization contributed towards this growth of customer centricity within financial services? Zach?
Yeah, I think like a couple of different examples of that. And one real root cause that has been pretty impactful for our organization, and I think many quite broadly, is the sort of like outside impetus of COVID to question what normal looks like in one facet of your life kind of impels people to question what normal looks like in every aspect of their lives. So something as simple as like account to account payments, where, in Europe, we've done those manually for an incredibly long time. You sort of are used to like typing in someone's account and sort code, typing in a reference, copying and pasting it, possibly going back and forth between the two. And you don't really need to do that. So we've seen kind of payment initiation, which is one of our products for bank-to-bank payments, take off pretty significantly across a number of use cases under COVID, like remittances. A company like PaySend helping folks send money to their family that they might not be able to see in person, and just kind of trying to do that as quickly as possible. So I think like reopening some of the doors that folks probably didn't realize were closed around like what simple little things they do every day look like, has been pretty impactful for us. And I think the second piece that I won't dwell on too much because I alluded to it earlier is working with regulators and governments and lenders to kind of get things out the door quickly to like truly just help people, like to not overthink it. Our financial identity team spun up a product functionally over a weekend, probably over the time slightly before and slightly after, including the weekend, to make sure that folks were able to qualify for PPP and programs in the UK, able to prove that qualification to the government, and kind of had some understanding of what the sequencing would look like for that fund disbursement. So we had customers come to us and say like, what banks does it make sense for us to work with? Who should we be getting help from here to find out how to like parse this application? Because the actual regulatory relief piece was swift and great, and the implementation piece was swift and complicated. So fintechs like ourselves, banks like NatWest certainly had a big role to play in like the very base acts that we didn't think of before COVID, but ended up being important during COVID, of getting people the super quick relief that they needed, and kind of working within the narrow lanes of the existing rails and stuff that existed to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Regulators also accelerated their policies around these things. And I have to say, it has been quite impressive to see that as well. And of course, fintechs like yourselves very much influence that. Mm-hmm. James?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So I guess, so in terms of COVID-19, how it's accelerated some of the approach to reach consumers, I think one of the key areas here is, I guess we acknowledge that we're a speed bump. We're a necessary one. And I say we're a speed bump being to gain access, you need to prove someone's identity. And it's better than it's less than a trip to the high street branch, which was really painful for many people. Now you can do it digitally, but there's still this speed bump that you need to go over. And another part to that, if you think about consumers, is no one is aiming to prove their identity. That's actually the challenge in a way. There has to be a benefit for it. So what I mean by that is they come to us with the aim of opening a bank account. That's what they want. And identity is one of the key steps that they need to go through to get there. So we want to accelerate that. So we need to ensure that we minimize the size of the speed bump to make it as safe and as convenient to access. So things that we've done over the years is to try and drive, one, greater accuracy and doing it quickly. That is just a given. Think of, I guess, all the disruption, they're non-negotiables. And then also trying to ensure that good customers don't have a kind of, when I say good customers, people providing information to verify themselves have the best first time throughput. So what I mean by that is our SDKs have built in input capture to try and give real-time feedback to customers before it's kind of too late, or it takes too many hours or too many days before a decision can be made. So trying to make it as real-time and as problem solving, like real-time problem solving as possible. You get them over that speed bump to get them to what they want. So that's definitely an area you have to accelerate, because if not, we're not doing our job right against our mission, and also has a massive detrimental impact on businesses' abilities to retain or acquire new customers.
Yeah, I think you both have alluded to the fact that being available 24/7 as well is quite important. How about you, Maria?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, because I think, Rashee, when I look at the bank's overall roadmap for the last 3 to 5 years, and things that have been on the roadmap for the last 3 to 5 years, things that we have delivered already, I think, to be honest, COVID has not really changed what we wanted to deliver. What it definitely has provided is more momentum behind it, that I definitely agree. POCs that we wanted to slowly take to pilot and then slowly scale up, there's been a lot of speed around, just scaling it up to as many consumers as possible. Solutions that were previously designed just for retail banking customers, because we thought, we wanted to test out the appetite and then increase to commercial or SME customers. I think that speed has definitely come about. But overall, if I think of the things that we wanted to deliver, that has not really changed. The innovation and transformation has been some of the core areas of the bank, and there's been a lot of investment, there's been a lot of focus on delivering the right transformation, because as you said earlier on, Rashee, banking has previously been a very, a closed environment, a very closed sort of a system, which is also has its complications within itself. So just taking those complications out and opening up the interface to things like open banking, which is the right thing for the customer, has definitely happened. So I would say acceleration definitely provided by COVID-19. But on the other hand, if I were to give you an example of something which we had not thought about previously, but has had to happen because of COVID, a great example would be the COVID payment holiday. So last year, the UK government introduced a payment holiday for people who were struggling for whatever reason, credit card, mortgages, loans, and giving that sort of an experience online, where previously, people would just be going to a branch, talking to someone, because it's an emotional time for them as well, probably a very difficult time for them as well. Taking that experience and almost transposing that online, providing the right functionality, but also keeping in mind that we have to be emotionally quite sensitive to how the consumers are feeling. That has been a challenge. So I think COVID has definitely helped us relook at how do we provide experiences which are not just a functionality, but also have an underlying emotion to them. And I think a lot of banks have done that quite well. So yes, definitely, COVID has enabled banks to take on a different approach to solving digital problems, and they've had to do that at pace, because there was always a timeline attached to it. But yeah, that's what I'd say.
I love the idea of, having emotions in it as well, right? It makes it just such a personalized experience. And to all our attendees, keep your questions coming. In 10 minutes, we will put the questions in front of the panelists. We have received quite a few. But my last two questions for all of you, and moving on to some more exciting topics, but what are some new exciting technologies you think will play a key role in pushing this forward? James, you want to go first?
Yeah. I touched on it earlier that we're in the kind of the early adopter stage. So the future adoption of biometric authentication could be and will be a real game changer. I think at the moment, a lot of identity verification is used because you need to do it rather than you want to do it. So what I mean by that is all the legacy process like KBA questions, so all the knowledge-based questions and all the passwords you have to do, they've kind of they're here, aren't they? We all do them. They're all so painful. Yeah. And there has to be some really strong ROI to justify the level of investment to switch from doing it the default way to replacing it with a new, stronger form. And like the adoption of biometrics into different stages of the life cycle to make life easier. Because it would be, because like I say, there's a little black book of all your passwords is still what people have. There's no getting away from it. I think that is a really exciting role to be introduced over the coming years, because I don't think we're seeing it enough yet. Biometric authentication is there, but it's not as mainstream as I think it will be in just around the corner.
I need that. I definitely will be the first one to sign up when this comes up. Zach, how about you?
Yeah, definitely some overlap with James there. I think biometric authentication is super exciting. Passwords made a lot of sense when they were first introduced, but I think increasingly like the concept of SCA and the ability to authenticate with just face or touch ID makes user journeys super, super simple, and anything that kind of, one, bumps accuracy, two, gets bad actors out of the ecosystem, and then three, improves the like consumer onboarding and sort of recurring consumer use product. Like those are all great things. I think that the top level one is kind of obvious, and I can drill into it a little bit, but PSD2 is quite innovative, again, from a regulatory perspective. Banks are still working out how to implement it. The UK banks have done an absolutely fantastic job of that. The banks kind of across Europe are getting there as well. I think kind of within those 2 points, combining them, the ability to sort of make a payment directly from your bank account, whether you're investing in the stock market, which we have certainly seen a lot of over the last 12 months, or buying cryptocurrency, which I believe we've also seen a lot of over the last 12 months. The ability to kind of do that thing seamlessly and do it straight from your bank account with just kind of a quick redirect and a Face ID is sort of tremendously impactful, and is one of those things that we certainly view as a base technology for the next 5 years, and really a base technology for the next 1 to 2 years, as long as consumers are adopting and getting up to speed. So I think that makes things easier for consumers. It makes things easier for businesses, and on the scale of like adding layers of complexity, removing layers of complexity. Consumers having a sort of more intimate relationship with account-to-account payments and being able to sort of shorten that line between their financial lives and their bank accounts, and then their investing lives and their personal lives, and whatever they use those bank accounts for is definitely going to continue increasing over the next few years. Great,
and making it just more seamless. How about you, Maria?
Yeah, I think very similar idea as well. I think onboarding, customer authentication, not just from an onboarding perspective, but as Zach said, payments, especially in times of COVID. If a customer needs to send money to their relative, parents, whatever, same country or in a different country, I think authentication provides a great base around that to make sure that the payments and transactions are happening in a safe and secure environment. There's a lot of work that is happening on just focusing on increasing customer security online, making sure that when customers give us their data, whether it's via PSD2 or other regulations, then how do we communicate how the bank is using the data, how do we communicate the effective use cases that we are after. I think along with that, open banking and that ecosystem of different applications coming together, I think that's a very exciting space that we are seeing, because there are just so many different applications that you could take from open banking as well. It could be, validating someone's address, validating someone's financial transactions from the past, all the way through to making a payment quite seamlessly from one account to another. So for me, what will be very interesting is over the next couple of years, how do banks overall explore open banking and that developing of the ecosystem with other financial institutions quite nicely? How do we partner with the right fintechs as well? I think previously from doing everything in-house to now finding the right partner who can help you provide the right solution for the customer. I think that behavioral change is on the rise, and I think definitely rightly so, it would continue for us to combine or join the hands together to provide the right solution for the customer. I think all of those things will continue to be the trend.
So Maria, you did elaborate, on the emotional side of things as well, and we spoke about these exciting technologies, and this one is specifically for you since you work, for a bank. There will be the importance of having people, I think, as well, interacting with your customer as well. So how do you think technology will complement these traditional means of servicing your customers?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rashee, because it's almost that never-ending debate between technology or that manual face-to-face interaction, and I don't see them very different. I actually think they're probably the two sides of the same coin, where one actually cannot go just alone. They almost have to work hand in hand when we look at the current scenario. For me, the way I think about it is when technology works, it works really well, it works really effectively. But when it fails, oh my God. So, you will always have customer experiences where people will not just have a happy path. There will be unhappy path in the journey. And we could look at just onboarding, because we've sort of focused a lot on that. You can use technology to validate documents, government-issued documents, take a selfie in real time, validate that. And technology could be brilliant at providing the speed and accuracy. But when it fails, the customer does not know what to do. And I think that's where you take that manual interaction, you take the experts who have done this for the last couple of years, and you almost complement the technology by providing an additional layer of security, an additional layer of, the first line of defense or second line of defense to actually combat any problems that happen. So I would say, they both have to, at least for the next couple of years, they both almost have to go hand in hand together to deliver the right experiences for the customers.
No, that's great, guys. And we have quite a few questions coming up. I did want to ask one last questions about challenges, but let's go into the Q&A first, perhaps, and I'll see how we can wrap this up. So James, this one's coming for you. Please, can you elaborate more on accessibility and what is it in, say, for example, for a 70-year-old who has arthritis and is unable to use the chat functionality?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. I think like I say, it's a really important question. This level of inclusion and accessibility is it's great that what's important is it sits very high from what we find with our clients as a really important point to consider when I guess when trying to serve not only your existing customer base, but also trying to ensure that you are providing a level of inclusion for new customers you're trying to bring on. So I think before I jump into Onfido, it's important that you have to have a number of options or scenarios. There is definitely not far from a one size that fits all here. So that's why you need to have, I think it's important to have fallbacks to ensure that no one's excluded. I mean, for us, we're trying to indirectly, we're trying to remove what already is some of the pain from accessibility point, which is lots of form filling. Form filling is predominantly what a lot of people have to do to get some sort of access or to try and get something that they want in return. And our SDKs are kind of where we've put all of our investment into. So outside of the SDKs, we have an API. So the SDKs are the areas where we're designing for it to be used in conjunction with UI resizing. So if they have a big text size enabled on their phone, the Art SDK will also resize, so it's easier to tap into that UI. So it's lovely continuity between their settings and what's being asked of them through the stage. We're also trying to drive auto capture as well. So it's still, where possible, trying to make it as seamless or as fewer steps as possible without having to click through and also trying to give as clear instructions as possible around what's being asked. But I don't think it's a fantastic answer I've given you, in all honesty, but because it's a hard one. It's a really hard one. All I can say is we are looking at both. When we deal with these things, you need to deal with the domain experts, and we're the technologists. We're looking to build technology, and we're trying to understand what the implications are. So like I said, working closely with lots of different accessibility kind of governing bodies is kind of our path to ensure that we have a roadmap that's inclusive of trying to ensure that we continue to give a good footprint for people.
No, thank you, James. And, talking about financial inclusion, we have a general question who has just come in as well for all of you. When and how will you be designing with the financially excluded people in mind? So James, obviously you gave a little bit of a background on what Onfido is doing, but if you would like to add to it, and then Maria and Zach as well.
Well, financially excluded, when I think back to Innovate Finance years and years ago, this was one of the big topics that was talked about in the APPG like 6 years ago around financial exclusion. And it's still obviously here today. I think, and I did touch on at the beginning, this concept of a risk-based approach. And the reason I say that is the underlying reason, or one of the big underlying reasons to financial exclusion is the reliance on credit history to provide any form of access, even in the form of a current account. And I think one of the guys who were first on the block were a company called Pocket, who were trying to change that, and they're still doing great work today. We work closely with them. And the reason I say that is there's still exclusion if you don't have an identity document, but nonetheless, people can get a sort code and account number with just an ID document and their face, and start building up a footprint. Then in time, hopefully, we'll be able to provide further access to other services. Yeah. And I've probably got to give a plug to friend Freddie, who runs Credit Kudos as well, and there's many others out there, but they are reshaping the way credit is decided. So I feel that is, again, good. Unfortunately, it's probably a little bit localized. It's a bit, I'm thinking UK here a little bit much, and not as borderless as you could be. But yeah, I think that's I guess the big bits for me.
Cool. Zach?
Yeah, I'll limit myself here on time because I could talk about this for the last 49 minutes in the next 10. I think there are like two incredibly huge, incredibly systemic problems that, you know, all the folks on this panel are certainly reckoning with from really both a product and a personal perspective. There was a chart in The Economist recently about like the unbanked population in sort of the largest countries of the world. That number sort of vacillates between 5%, which is unacceptably high, and 60%, which is really unacceptably high. It's an incredibly important problem. If you are locked out of financial services, you are locked out of finding a pathway to financial services, or owning a home, or buying a car, or, you know, registering your children for school. It's a huge problem, and one that has existed sort of forever, but is almost getting worse in some ways. Sort of as sort of new services proliferate that are reliant on the checking account, which is our responsibility. So from a product perspective there, I think it is our sort of moral and company imperative to make sure that we are removing the barrier to entry for folks to access financial services. That ties in very closely to our mission. Again, we want to make sure that everyone can sort of know their data and see it and move it around and do what they want to do with it. You know, financial services is becoming a slightly less difficult field to enter if you have a passion and want to provide something to someone. You know, there are a bunch of like niche products and niche banks for specific groups of people, or, you know, lenders for specific groups of people. So like cutting and unbundling, you know, groups that are traditionally underbanked or unbanked is getting a lot easier with, you know, banking as a service providers like Railsbank, you know, open banking providers like Plaid. If you know about it, you can ultimately build a product for someone that might be underserved by like sort of other mass products on the market. I think the second point there, and an equally large problem, is like figuring out how people know they are underserved and then giving them a pathway to change that. One of the things that we talk about a lot internally when we're building things is minimizing whiplash. Like, we don't want people to feel like they've been transported from point A to point B in the journey. It's super important that they know where they're going, they understand who has their data, they understand what's happening. I think historically there's a lot of whiplash in the credit referencing process. Massive +1 to James on sort of reorganizing that and making it a little more consumer centric. Which, you know, consumers have traditionally been left out of, like, 1, the credit process, 2, the discovery of how to improve their credit process. And there are a lot of really innovative startups and teams within large companies working on solving that right now. But I think from Plaid's perspective, you know, 2 things. 1, making it really easy to stand up a financial service product and move from 0 to 1, go from unbanked to banked kind of instantly. And then 2, make sure that folks can find out where the problem is. If you've been rejected from something, you should know why. If you have shared your data with someone in application for some type of loan, you should know what data has been shared. That sort of privacy control, consumer transparency, user permissioning element is super, super core to us.
So actually, you know, I'm just conscious of time, but I'll give you, you know, put 2 more questions forward. And, you know, a lot about privacy has come up, and maybe Maria, you can take this one first, but any insights with regards to the balance between customer privacy and customer convenience? So if you could, you know, maybe in 1-2 sentences, and then we'll go to the next question.
Sure. I think, you know, as I said, both go hand in hand, Rashee. With good customer experience, if the security element is missing, then people are just not going to use it. You need to build your customers' trust in order for them to really uptake the digital propositions that you're providing. So for me, I think I can't say one outweighs the other. I think both of them equally important. They have to go hand in hand, is what I'd say.
Great, thank you. James, 2 sentences. I know it's hard to put this in 2 sentences.
So you've caught me off guard a little bit. The question on privacy versus
customers' convenience and
yeah.
privacy.
So transparency and being as clear, being as clear and public as possible on it, but also trying to trying to ensure that it is how do we say it? So trying to make it as understandable and not foreign to the customer, to you and I, to understand exactly what we are committing to when it comes to sharing information. I think it's improving, but there's still a long way to go.
Fair enough. And Zach, this one's for you. You've talked, and maybe James, you can, put this in as well, again, in 2 sentences, if you can answer this. You've talked a lot about, native apps. Is there a view between how customers use their smartphones? That is, do you see plenty that want to use, mobile apps versus mobile web? Is asking a customer to download an app making it easier for customers to interact with their provider? Surely that's another step in the process that's not required.
Yeah, so like the total cop out of an answer that I will still absolutely give is that it depends on what the user wants. I think probably 80% has been the most recent number I've seen of consumers in the UK interact with their bank online or in app. I would guess that a high number of that 80% is in app, just because it's so central to your life and something you interact with so frequently. One of the benefits of doing things in an app-based way is being able to use biometric authentication. Your phone knows what your face looks like. It knows who you are. It means that you don't have to type things, which is kind of nice. That helps on the authentication side. On the Plaid customer side, we have plenty of customers that don't have apps, and that's totally fine. You can interact with them on your mobile device via the web, or on the computer, sort of wherever you are and whatever you like to do at the moment. And the experience works pretty much the same. So the way that we think about that is if an end user wants to do something, we want to make sure that they're able to. So I think for high touch things that end users interact with constantly, it makes sense to have that sort of native feel and flow and make things move a little bit faster. If it's a sort of one-off thing where, I am on my phone and I am applying for insurance and I will never look at my insurance app after I have my policy, that's totally fine. And that should be a delightful experience as well.
James, do you want to add anything to it before I close?
I thought that was a great answer. I was going to be ruthless and say, no, it must be apps. And if it's web, then it only should be desktop, not mobile web. But I think that's, Zach, there's loads of reasons why that doesn't work. I think that UX, obviously native app UX is brilliant. I think it's important to know that it's such a great acquisition channel, and the concept of downloading and going through that is obviously far friendlier and far more seamless than trying to encourage people, first people through the door to go through a mobile web journey. It just doesn't work. I think the consumer's everything though. Where do people spend their time? If they spend it on desktop and they need that functionality, then it typically is going to be where you have to continue that level of investment. And the app is more potentially just seen as a vehicle for acquisition and, like you say, a bit of day-by-day glancing, not doing anything more than that. Maria's probably far better placed on this one as well, though.
Perfect. No, this was very helpful. And I'm so sorry, guys. I mean, we have so many questions, which came, but I would just like to close, on a very positive note as well. It's wonderful what, financial services firms and fintechs have really stepped up to do, accelerated this use of digital, financial products and services on our fingertips. Sorry. So in 30 seconds, if you would like to, tell our audience what excites you most about fintech, this industry, and customer centricity. Maria?
I think the last thing, customer centricity, is definitely one of the things that is quite exciting. I think the dial has shifted quite significantly where people are focusing a lot on that. So that's definitely there. But I'm also quite excited to see how after the pandemic, things actually evolve. How do we build on top of the digital transformation that we have already provided? How do we continue to build on that momentum? Or would things come back to normal? So I think observing that trend and really seeing how that goes from there would be quite exciting for me.
Thank you, Maria. Zach?
Yeah, I think in a quick summary, I am really excited to see that, something that we have always interacted with indirectly in our lives, which is our checking accounts, our bank accounts, our transaction histories, is something that we now interact with directly. So it started off as a joke a number of years ago that everything was going to become fintech. But everything is going to become fintech, and we're happy to play a small part in making that as easy as possible for the folks that are adopting it.
How about you, James?
Yeah, like I say, super privileged position I and Onfido are in when it comes to this point. I'm really encouraged by the outlook of what's to come when it comes to fintech, for sure. There's great consumer adoption. I think there's good involvement from the regulator, and there's still some great talented people looking to kind of reshape how they should look in the future. So yeah, I really hope that means that us as people are going to really benefit from it, as well as I guess the wider community.
Thank you so much, guys. And I have to say, what excites me is the fact that I can sit here with you guys in one of the most, vibrant cities for fintech, London. And it's great to have, people like you guys in the ecosystem. And I really cannot wait to see what else is in store from Onfido, from Plaid, as well as, NatWest. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us. If you want to, get in touch with the speakers, please do get in touch with the Innovate Finance team. You can also watch this on demand. And once again, have a good day, and please take very good care of yourselves. Bye.